Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuvya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we begin with chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. Now we may feel that, chapter 1 is very introductory and it's just chapter 1. The real Gita starts from chapter 2. But there's so much material in chapter 1 that it's hard to cover in one class. There's so much. The Gita is only 700 verses. So every verse in the Gita is very, very significant. And it's only there because it's very important. So without any further delay, we will start talking about chapter 1, which is first, so therefore in some ways the most important. Although we are, this is an introductory chapter, but in some ways it's very important, comparative to the other chapters as important. So here we see Krishna and Arjuna, they have assembled at the battle of Kurukshetra. So last time in the story of the Mahabharata, we came to this point. We have arrived here. All the peace messages have gone. All the other alternatives have been tried. And when everything has failed, and Duryodhana and the Kauravas are determined to be demoniac and destroy the world, now Krishna and Arjuna have assembled here and are ready to fight. And so once arriving there, once Arjuna has reached at this point, at this place, then doubts start to arise in his heart and in his mind. He's thinking, am I doing the right thing by fighting in this battle of Kurukshetra? Am I doing the right thing? Should I be fighting this great battle? Or should I just leave it up to God and let them kill me? Which he says very clearly in the Gita. He actually says it in the second chapter, and that's why the beginning of the second chapter is also a continuation of Arjuna's doubts. But his spiritual journey begins with a doubt. In the Gita's beginning chapter, we are presented with the circumstances that lead Arjuna to an interest in spiritual philosophy. Certain circumstances in our life cause us to seek spiritual knowledge. This is a fact. In every person's spiritual life, we'll see that there is some very unhappy or traumatic experience or some doubt in their mind that arose due to the circumstances, maybe something they saw, they didn't even experience it, but they observed it, that led them to question the meaning of life, led them to question what is the goal of life. And this is why spiritual knowledge and our experience in the material world, they go hand in hand. This is why Krishna has made the material world. Krishna has made the material world not because he just wants to be mean to us, but he's made the material world because it is in these difficult experiences that the greatest spiritual journeys begin. And this is actually a fact. If we look in the life of Buddha, right? Buddha, it's called the famous four sights. Buddha sees, he sees the old man, he sees the sick man, he sees the dying man or the dead man, and he sees a monk. And when he sees these four passing sights, then Buddha begins to reflect on the nature of life. And then he realizes that, no, I don't care about this kingdom. What I care about is enlightenment. In the same way, all the great thinkers and religionists in the world will see that they had some recognition about the temporality of life, the temporary nature of life. Like the famous Western philosopher Immanuel Kant, it said he was walking down the street, and as he walked down the street, one fine day, he noticed that everything around him was changing. Everything in the world was changing. His own body was changing, his friends was changing, everything was temporary. And so that led him to his quest in philosophy, where he started to study philosophy and came up with this theory of phenomena and noumena, famous philosophy, where the whole world is noumena, it's a world of change, and the whole world is a world of phenomena, the world of change. And behind this world of phenomena is noumena, that which does not change. Similarly, people don't know in Greek philosophy, Socrates and Plato, they are called the mothers or the fathers of Greek philosophy. One philosopher says that everything after Plato is footnotes to Plato. Everything in Western philosophy after Plato is footnotes to Plato and Socrates. They were the founders of this philosophy. And what people don't know, Plato's guru was Socrates. So it all began with Socrates. And Socrates was a soldier in Athens. And he became very well known for his courageousness, for his greatness in the battle, for being very courageous. And so he's always very loyal to Athens. And then once the battle is over, then he continues living in Athens and he becomes a philosopher, Socrates. And very interestingly, his life and his teachings mirror the situation of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll get more to that as we progress forward. But Socrates also was a soldier. He faced life and death, and that led him to philosophy. So Arjuna here is not faced with an easy situation. We think our life is difficult. But Arjuna, he's now on a battle that he does not want to fight. On the other side are the Kauravas, his own brothers, the people he grew up with, his uncles, his grandsire Bhishma, who he loved more than his own life. And he's being asked to fight with these people. So Arjuna is saying, what is the meaning of it? What is the purpose of my life? So on both sides were great warriors, and on one side were the Pandavas, and on the other side were the Kurus. On the side of the Pandavas, here you find Bhishma, Arjuna, Yudhana, Virata, Drupada, the son of Drupada, Drishtadyumna, Yudhamanyu, Uttamoja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. They're all on the sides of the Pandavas. And each one of these, we can go through their stories, their greatness, but we don't have time right now. And then on the side of the Kauravas, you have Dhritarashtra, who's not really fighting, but he's present there in spirit. He's the cause of the fight. Duryodhana, Dronacharya, Bhishma, Karna, Kripacharya, Ashvathama, Vikarna, son of Somadhatta, called Bhurishava, Jayadratha, Kritavarma, and Shalya. So all of these warriors are on the side of Duryodhana. And Srila Prabhupada writes that just see how great of a politician Duryodhana was. He was such a great politician that even though he was on the side of evil, he managed to have three great sages fighting on his side, even though truly they didn't want to. One was Bhishma, a Mahajan. Due to loyalty to the king, he was obliged to fight on the side of Duryodhana. And in the first chapter, we see that Duryodhana plays that relationship very well. He, he's very clever on the point of being, what's the word, insidious, or where he gives great respect to Bhishma, which almost taunts him because Bhishma doesn't want to fight on his side, but he's made him the commander, and he's telling everyone, you must all support grandsire Bhishma. Then he has Dronacharya, the teacher of both the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And Dronacharya was not obliged, but due to the political expertise of Duryodhana, he wins Dronacharya even to fight on his side. And this is also, Prabhupada says, due to Dronacharya's contamination, because he was eating food that was contaminated by materialists, by Duryodhana. He was eating Duryodhana's salt. He became obliged to Duryodhana and therefore had to fight on his side, showing how the Brahmana, the teacher who is the head of society, should never become obliged to anyone. They must be self-sufficient. And this is why, according to the Vedic system, they always lived on charity. They never lived on anything less than charity. They never lived on salary. Because as soon as you accept too much charity from one person, or you accept salary, then you become obliged to that person. And then the third one is Kripacharya. Kripacharya was in some ways even more in the mode of goodness, because he was not a military teacher. He was just their teacher. He was an acharya. And even he, due to contamination and due to Duryodhana's political intrigue, was fighting on the wrong side. So Arjuna was not just facing demons on the other side, but he was facing great sages, his own teachers, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, his grandsire, who was a Mahajan, Bhishma, on the other side. And also we can add a fourth person here, Karna. Karna was not, intrinsically bad, but again, Duryodhana played his cards at the right time in the right place, and he got Karna also on his side. And he also contaminated him. So here we see that mundane intelligence, mundane knowledge can be misapplied in the service of our senses, like Duryodhana did, or it can be applied in the service of the Lord. And when it's applied in the service of our senses, it becomes actually more dangerous. Knowledge becomes more dangerous than not having knowledge. Duryodhana was not a typical Rakshasa with fangs coming out of his mouth. He was not a demon in that way. He was a very polished demon, very much like the politicians today. And externally, he actually looked very respectable. The films, the Mahabharata films, sort of show him in a different light. But actually, he was very controlled in his speech. He was very, very sophisticated. But his heart was in the wrong place. Just like they've done so many surveys of things, and they find that so many of the bad websites, criminal websites, and all these things, they come from students out of Harvard. Right? So some of the most intelligent students in the world are responsible for the bad in the world, because they have the intelligence. So they're intelligent, they can do things in this world, but they misapply it. and they use it in the service of Maya. So Duryodhana is such a person. So now Duryodhana is speaking many verses. He is first of all going in order to Bhishma, then to Drona, then to Kripacharya. He's going one after the other to try to make sure that all of his commanders are loyal to him. Just like right now in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, we see that both sides, they have removed some of their generals. This is a great problem in a war, that if the generals themselves turn against the king, then you lose the war. So right now, he's gone to Bhishma, and he's saying there are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. Right? Arjuna is saying that there's so many of these demons who are assembled on this battlefield, so many of these great warriors, and they're ready to lay down their lives for my sake. Showing, instilling in them the fact that, what a great personality he is, giving them courage. But at the same time, the way the acharyas interpret it is that Duryodhana is actually predicting the future. Why is he saying that they're prepared to lay down their lives? Because every single one of them will perish in this great battle. So why does Krishna allow this battle? Srila Prabhupada, in one purport, he writes, Krishna wanted to gather all the demoniac powers on that battlefield of Kurukshetra and kill them. That was his plan. The fight was who would be the king, Maharaj Yudhishthira or Duryodhana. So Krishna decided Duryodhana is unfit, Maharaj Yudhishthira is fit. This was Krishna's desire. Therefore the fight. Kurukshetra. Krishna wanted to wipe out all unwanted demons from the face of the world and enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira because he was the exact representative of Krishna. Anyone who was killed, who died in the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the presence of Krishna, they all attained their original constitutional position, spiritual form. They all went back home, back to Godhead. Everyone. Therefore, Krishna is absolute. Either he's killing or he's protecting. It is all the same. So Prabhupada here mentions very interesting points, two very important points. First is that Krishna allowed this battle because he wanted to gather all the demoniac powers and he wanted to destroy them. So Krishna does this from time to time. Mother Earth does this. When there's too much military, when there's too much military phalanxes, Krishna brings them all together and like sticks in a fire, they all burn. And in this way relieves the earth of these demoniac powers. Is that when there's too much of that, the earth becomes overburdened. How can the world go on if the demoniac powers become too great? So he had to establish Maharaj Yudhishthira as king. But in the pretext of doing that, he also fulfills another purpose. Is according to different descriptions, and it seems like what the acharyas say, he brings 640 million soldiers on the battlefield with their armies, with their weapons. And on the pretext of putting Maharaj Yudhishthira as king, he destroys all of them. Now, the second point, someone may say, but how could Krishna be so cruel? I mean, we have war going on right now in the world. And even if a few thousand people die, it's so painful. It's hard to read the news. It's very hard, actually. You see what's happening there, innocent people dying. Even the soldiers, some of them are very innocent. They're 18 years old, not knowing why they're fighting, where they're going. It's the generals and the the leaders who are evil, not these soldiers, not these civilians. They're fighting based upon the orders of the leaders. So it's very painful. So how can Krishna allow this? Is he so hard-hearted? Being God, he's allowing this? So Prabhupada here clarifies. Very amazing. When I read this actually relieved my heart, because Mahabharata I loved watching it as a child, the entire serial up to the point of the war. And then the war is just so painful. It's like Mahabharata was always hard to watch at that point. But this relieves the heart that Prabhupada is saying that anyone who died on that battlefield in Krishna's presence, they all attained their original constitutional position. They were all liberated. All of them went back home, back to Godhead. This is why whatever Krishna does is absolute, it's wonderful. And this is why we cannot imitate Krishna. When Krishna arranges a war, it's as good as liberating everyone. It's as good as peace. It's better than peace. All these 640 million soldiers, because they died in the presence of Krishna, Krishna was there, they all went back home, back to Godhead. This is actually the strongest statement I found of Srila Prabhupada. This is why I put it. Some places, different places will say that some got heavenly planets, but here in the presence of Krishna. So Krishna is present there. This is called darshan, right? Darshan, people think darshan means going and seeing the deity. Darshan, people say, let's go for darshan. It means going and seeing the deity. But actually the word darshan means that the deity seeing you. It means darshan happens when you go to the temple and the deity sees you. This is actually the Sanskrit meaning, the exact meaning. It means being seen. Darshan does not mean seeing, but the tense and the case of that word is being seen. So Krishna is seeing everyone. Krishna was present there on the battlefield. Whether or not they saw Krishna was not important. But Krishna saw them. They died in the presence of Krishna. Therefore, they received their original constitutional spiritual form. So if we arrange a war, we are sinful. Those leaders, those people will have to suffer the reaction. But if Krishna arranges it, he does it to liberate everyone. So they all went back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishna is absolute. Either his killing or his protecting. It is all the same. Somebody, Prabhupada goes on to say, was criticizing me that Swamiji, you are introducing this Hare Krishna movement. People are becoming cowardly. They simply chant Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada has often criticized this. If people simply chant Hare Krishna, how will the world go on? How will the businesses go on? How will people work and maintain their families? So I replied, Prabhupada says, that you will see the power of the Hare Krishna movement in due course of time. Because there are two battles in India, the battle between Ravana and Ram. Ravana, the battle of Ramayana. And another battle was the battle of Kurukshetra. And in these two battles, the hero was a Vaishnava and Vishnu. So Prabhupada said the Vaishnava is no coward. The Vaishnava is no, what's the word? He's no coward. He's when a person is lazy, there's some word for that. I forget. But the devotee is very, very powerful. A devotee is a great hero. A devotee is very active. He's always engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. He's always engaged in serving the Lord because he is engaged in the service of Krishna. So in this Gita, we find 5 topics that are being discussed. And this is actually pointed out in the introduction. I hope all of you read the introduction this last week. This week, I will give you homework from chapter 1 and questions from the chapter 1 and maybe 1 or 2 from the introduction. So I'll post the homework on the WhatsApp group, and then you'll email your homework answers, your result, to my email address that I posted on the WhatsApp group. So in the introduction, Prabhupada points out that there are 5 themes of the Gita. The first one is, who am I? which is the Gita talks about the Atma, the soul. Actually, one of the most famous topics of the Gita, chapter 2, this is the beginning of all knowledge, that we are the eternal soul. The second theme is, where am I? So who am I? Where am I? So the second thing the Gita talks about is Prakriti, nature. So we have this list, Atma, Prakriti, Karma, but they actually connect with fundamental questions of life, questions that Arjuna had while standing there in the battlefield, questions that we all ask and that every philosopher asks. Who am I? Where am I? So Krishna talks about the nature of this world, Prakriti. What am I doing here? That is, what am I doing here? That is karma, the activities. How long am I here? Or when will I get free from this place? How long am I here? That is kala, or time. The fourth fundamental element of this world that the Gita covers. And the fifth one is there something beyond this world? And that is Ishvara, or God. Right? So the Gita talks about, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? How long am I here? And is there something beyond this world? These 5 things we should memorize. If someone asks us, what is the Gita about? We can tell them these 5 things. Atma, Prakriti, Karma, Kala, Ishvara. So these are the 5 topics of the Gita, right? This is what the Gita is about. It's a book of philosophy. It's a book about understanding the absolute truth. Now, chapter 1 is a long list of names. It talks about the great fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It talks about the great warriors. So someone may ask that, why is chapter 1 starting with all this? How does it connect with these 5 themes of the Gita? Again, we're dealing with the question, why chapter 1? So Prabhupada answers this. So people may ask, by mentioning these great fighters, what spiritual progress do we make? We're meant for chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So by chanting the names of these great fighters, what do we gain? But the thing is that Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, wherever there's connection with Krishna, that also becomes Krishna. So Prabhupada here is saying something that we talk about throughout the Gita. There's 3 things in spiritual life. There's Sambandha, there's Abhideya, and there's Prayojana. Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Rupa Goswami in the Nectar Devotion talks about this. On the path to God, there's 3 important parts or elements. The first one is Sambandha, which is knowledge about our relationship with Krishna. The second is Abhideya, or the process by which we revive that relationship with Krishna. So Abhideya is the process of bhakti, that is chanting Hare Krishna. That is Abhideya, the process by which we revive our relationship with Krishna. And the third is Prayojana, which is the goal, that is Krishna. That is also chanting, because chanting is non-different than Krishna. And so that is directly tasting Krishna, Krishna's presence, Krishna's association. So 3 things, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Now, it begins with Sambandha, the knowledge of the relationship with Krishna. And this is why Prabhupada said that all these books, every single book that Prabhupada wrote in the Krishna conscious movement, Prabhupada said all these books are meant to get you to chant Hare Krishna. Because chanting is a process, but chanting is not easy. When life becomes difficult, we see that it's not easy to chant. Or we chant, but we don't know why we're chanting, or we don't have enthusiasm to chant, or we don't have taste to chant. So all of those things are made possible through Sambandha, or knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. What is our relationship with him? And relationship with Krishna means relationship with the devotees of Krishna. Relationship with Krishna means hearing about Krishna. Relationship with Krishna means knowing everything connected to Krishna. This is why it all begins with hearing, Shravanam, then Kirtanam. Why hearing is stressed? Because hearing establishes the sambandha of the soul with Krishna. Therefore, everything that is in relationship with Krishna is as good as Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya muchyate. This is a verse that you'll learn in the Nectar Devotion, or if you've taken Nectar Devotion, you've already learned. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya. Yukta vairagya means seeing everything that is in relationship with Krishna to be in relationship with Krishna. And a devotee of the Lord always honors everything that is in relationship with Krishna. So when we're on the altar, for example, Krishna's jewelry, Krishna's utensils, Krishna's bell is all honored like the Lord because it is as good as Krishna. Prabhupada actually said when he was in Vrindavan, he said that there's no difference between the black and white marble tile floors in the Krishna Balaram Mandir and the black and white marble that Krishna and Balaram deity are made of. One time Prabhupada went into the temple and he saw that the floor was very dirty. The temple was very dirty, very unclean. And Prabhupada then chastised his disciples, and then he said this. This was in Vrindavan. Then he said this. He said, there's no difference. You see, when you go to Vrindavan, India, you'll see that the flooring there is marble, like in most Indian temples, and it's white marble and black marble, and it's checkered. So you have white, black, like is very common. It's a checkered, black and white. And the deity of Krishna and Balaram is also black and white. Krishna is black, Balaram is white. So see how amazing Prabhupada's metaphor is. How not metaphor, the way he speaks, so exact. He said Krishna and Balaram are black and white, and the devotees were very enthusiastic about serving Krishna and Balaram. There's no shortage of people wanting to go on the altar. But there was a shortage of devotees wanting to clean the temple floor. There's a great shortage. So Prabhupada said that there's no difference between the black and white flooring of the temple and the black and white deity of Krishna. In the same way, there's no difference between the names connected to Krishna and Krishna's pastimes and the name of Krishna. Therefore, chapter 1. Therefore, Prabhupada here is saying, what is the need of this if we're chanting Hare Krishna? He says, but the thing is Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. Because this is connected with Krishna, and because this increases our connection with Krishna, therefore it is as good as Krishna. That also becomes Krishna. So in one way, Duryodhana is a big demon, and he is, demoniac. But on the other side, because he is connected with Krishna's pastimes, when we're reading about Duryodhana in the Bhagavad Gita, then that reading is as good as reading Krishna's names. Because Krishna's Nama, Guna, and Leela are all the same. Prabhupada goes on to say, so Vaishnavas do not simply chant Hare Krishna. If there is a need, they can fight under the guidance of Vishnu and become victorious. Out of the 26 qualifications, one qualification is Daksha, expert. If there's a need for fighting, they can fight very expertly. That is also needed. Krishna consciousness does not mean one-sided. Krishna is all-pervading. The Krishna consciousness movement also should be all-pervading. It should touch everything, even politics, sociology, everything, if required. So Prabhupada here is saying, Krishna consciousness movement is not one-sided. And this is why Prabhupada gave us the whole process. And his process is a process, it's a package. Prabhupada was very specific in the way that he set up the bhakti process. He could have set it up differently. It's not by chance that he set it up in this way. He could have set it up differently, but he set it up in the way that it is balanced. It is not one-sided. He set it up in a way that it brings about a spiritual revolution in the hearts, in the minds, and in the society of this world. Prabhupada, in the introduction to the Gita, and also in the introduction to the Bhagavatam, he writes how these books will bring about a spiritual revolution in society. They will actually change society. So he has a process in mind. And this is why he gave us a balance of everything, a balance of chanting, a balance of service, a balance of reading, a balance of hearing, a balance of association. All of these things were important parts and parcels of the process that he made. And here he's pointing out that great Vaishnavas like Arjuna were fighting on the battle. And when they did not want to fight, then Krishna told them, no, you should fight. When they did not want to carry out their service to the Lord, then Krishna told them otherwise. So our service to the Lord is part of being a Vaishnava. This is part of the 26 qualities that a devotee is very expert in whatever they do. And when we fight under the guidance of the devotees of the Lord and of Lord Vishnu, when we serve, in our case it's not fighting, in our case it's serving, then we are victorious. Then we receive their mercy, and then we become very close to Krishna. We become very dear to the Lord. Now, when Arjuna, and I'm probably doing this a little bit out of order, when Arjuna has these doubts and he becomes very unhappy, then he searches, he tries to find ways of getting Krishna to understand his lamentation, getting Krishna to understand his distress. And so he does this by calling Krishna many different names, many different affectionate names, so that Krishna may be compassionately disposed towards him, may become compassionate towards them. So these names that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, particularly in the purport for text 11, Prabhupada mentions this, these names are very key. And we will learn these names as the Gita goes forward. So the first name that he refers to, that Arjuna refers to Krishna, is Govinda. He gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. So Prabhupada writes that Arjuna is referring to Krishna as Govinda, because Krishna is the one who gives pleasure to the senses and the cows. And therefore Arjuna wants Krishna to also give pleasure to his senses. He's saying, you give pleasure to everyone's senses, but why are you making me suffer? Give pleasure to my senses also, Krishna. Prabhupada actually says this, that he refers to him as Govinda, because he's saying, my senses are senses, so why don't you give me pleasure? But Prabhupada says, Krishna is not there to give pleasure to our material senses. Krishna gives spiritual senses. Krishna gives pleasure, spiritual pleasure, so our spiritual senses can be awakened. And the second is the cows. The cows, Krishna gives pleasure specifically to the cows. Therefore, if we protect cows, then our preaching becomes very powerful. Prabhupada therefore started cow protection in this movement, because unless you protect cows, actually, our preaching will not be that potent. By protection of the cows, by protection of the brahmanas, by protection of the children, by protection of the elderly, and by the protection of women, these 5 things, Krishna becomes very pleased. We see actually in demoniac civilization, these are the 5 things that are exploited. Cows are killed. The brahmanas or Brahminical culture, religion is destroyed. Right? The brahmanas, the teachers, the sadhus, the monks, the priests, they are not supported. They are rather destroyed. The women are exploited. This is the whole exploitation culture. This is something that Arjuna talks about in the Gita, that when the women of the family become polluted, everything goes down, everything gets destroyed. The elderly, they are thrown into what people call human warehouses. They're thrown into these nursing homes simply to be exploited. And actually now this is also happening in India. One person, this used to be an American thing, a Western thing, but one person was from India was telling how now nursing homes have gone in vogue in India. It's a big thing. And the children, the kids, they will take the money away from their parents. There the legal system is not very strong, so they'll forcefully take away all the wealth, and they'll put their father or their mother, they'll put them in this nursing home. And there, then the man, he is trying to live off of whatever money the children they may donate to them. The money was theirs, but the children have taken away, and they're just giving a few cents and dollars to them just to get by while they enjoy the house and the business and the money and everything that their father has established. He was telling actually a story that just recently he saw in Chennai. He saw in front of him, in front of a nursing home. This man was coming out, and you could see he was a very high-class man, very from a very good family background, and he was coming to get on the bus, and he gives the bus driver 1 or 2 rupees, and the bus driver tells him this is not enough. The fare is 20 rupees or something, and he tells the man, this is all I have. Please take it and let me go on the bus. And he was a very well-dressed, good man, but he was very clear he did not have any money. He had his clothes. He had he was staying in the nursing home, and he was just left like that. Similarly, there's a elderly lady who had fallen on the ground. She was very old, and she had fallen on the ground, and they came to pick her up. And she said, no, don't pick me up. Don't pick me up. She said, my children have thrown me out of the house. Now I'm in this nursing home, and I'm just waiting to die. Every day I just wait to die. I want to die. So the elderly are being exploited in this civilization. And then finally, we got the cows, we got the brahmanas, what was it? I forgot, which one did I miss?
Children.
The children, yes. And the children, Prabhupada says, the children, they're being killed in the womb, right? So the children, that is the whole abortion, that they're being killed in the womb. And so the children are not protected. And I mean, it's almost become politically correct now you're politically incorrect if you speak up against abortion. People see you as like a racist almost if you speak up against abortion. It is politically incorrect. I teach in academia, especially in academics, to say that no, there's something wrong with abortion. And recently it came in the news how the pro-choice leader, they were fighting against these very so-called, what they say, very oppressive laws in Texas and Idaho. Now, Idaho and Texas have passed these laws. You cannot have abortion after 8 weeks or 6 weeks, which is very reasonable. I mean, they're still allowing abortion. They're just saying that at least don't do it once the child is fully formed. And the child is fully formed after 6 to 8 weeks. But so there's a pro-life fighter, and this the leader of the pro-choice movement. They found in her home many fetuses that had been killed. So in order to help these women that were not being allowed in those states, she was allowing the mothers to come and deliver in her child, and then she would kill the child. because as a way of supporting abortion, that abortion should be allowed. So the children, they're not protected. So all four of these classes must be protected because Krishna gives pleasure to them. They are dear to Krishna. And the women, they are being exploited, right? Women are not being protected. They are being exploited because of, this is the whole culture now, in fact, that they are exploited. They are the weaker sex, Prabhupada says, physically speaking, but no protection is provided to them. So Krishna is called Govinda because he gives pleasures to the cows and the senses. He is called Vasudev because he appeared as the son of Vasudeva. So he's referred to as Vasudeva. Krishna becomes very compassionate towards his devotees. When he becomes very pleased when he is referred to or called upon in relation to his devotees. So by calling him Vasudeva, Arjun is again getting on Krishna's good side. Krishna is always good, but getting on his compassionate side. That, oh, son of Vasudeva. So Krishna becomes very pleased. Just like when Indra goes to appease Krishna, then he goes with Surabhi. He goes with the cow in front of him. He goes with the cows in front of him. Because he knows Krishna gives pleasure to the cows. We just talked about it. So if a cow is there, then he cannot get so angry at Indra. In the same way, when when the father is angry, the child will go with the father, with the mother, because the mother is softer, and this way the father may not get angry at the child. In the same way, the devotee, when in trouble, goes to Krishna with a devotee. And then he's also called therefore Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. Yashoda Nandanandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. Partha Sarathi because he worked as charioteer of his friend Arjuna. And Hrishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So this is the reason why he's called these names, because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. He's of course Arjuna doesn't call him Partha Sarathi, but he's referred to again in relationship to his devotee and as Hrishikesha. He is the owner of our senses and he gives direction to the senses of his devotees. Lord Krishna is referred to as Hrishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they're always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. Prabhupada is just so amazing in his words that he says. It's just unbelievable. He's so amazing. He's just, everything that he says is so wonderful. So he says, Krishna has senses. Our whole process of bhakti is a very sensual process. This is why in other processes they say, remove the senses, destroy the senses. Close your eyes, close your ears, and control your eyes, ears. Just live a life of solitude. But bhakti is opposite. In bhakti, everyone is trying to engage their senses in the service of the Lord. It's actually fine-tuning the senses even more. Right? We burn this very incense incense, and we actually are connoisseurs of incense. We go and we try to find incense everywhere. Right? Devotees do this. They actually go and find incense. One say, oh, you're such a sensual person. But they do this, why? Because to give pleasure to Krishna's senses. In the same way, we eat the best food. We have genuinely the best food because we're very sensual people. The materialists, the impersonalists, they are the ones who try to destroy the senses. They say, we are senseless. Unfortunately, Buddhism is like this. No desire, no senses, no individuality. And God is also senseless. God is not a person. So this is, Krishna. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesha. So, to the degree that we surrender to the Lord, to that degree, the Lord will direct our senses. And this is the truth, actually. This is so true. When a devotee surrenders to the Lord, then Krishna directs the devotee's life. And you'll actually see it. Krishna, every step of life, will give some guidance. He'll give some direction to show us, take a left turn now, take a right turn. Our life becomes guided by Krishna. This is so true. And the more advanced a devotee is, the more it will happen. And we don't experience it so much in our own life because we're not spiritually very advanced. But when we associate with advanced devotees, we see how that's the case. When an advanced devotee needs to get something done or something, Krishna will send the right person at the right time. It's amazing. Or when a devotee is trying to serve another devotee, Krishna will send the right guidance at the right time. Those of you who have joined the call from Indiana, right? We experienced this in the Indianapolis temple. The devotees there established a very nice temple. They took an old church and they established it. And we had these broken windows, and every single window of the church was broken. We got the church for a very cheap price, unbelievably inexpensive. And that was because it needed a lot of repair. So the devotees got it, and the devotees themselves with their own hands were repairing it. But the windows, I mean, you need someone professional. It's not like painting. You need someone professional who can order the right windows, can install them. And these are huge windows for a commercial building. And one fine Sunday, it was actually Govardhan Puja day, one man visited the temple, and he was a local, just lived 10 minutes away from the Indianapolis temple. And then after that, he visited next week also. He attended Govardhan Puja. He really liked it. He visited the following Sunday. And when he came, devotees then, there were only few people, they were able to speak to him. They asked him, what do you do for a profession? And he said, I work for a window company. I replace windows for my livelihood. And by this time, he had purchased a Gita. He was really into Krishna consciousness. He was really into it. And so devotees said, wow, God sent. You've changed windows. Every single window in the temple is broken. We've done everything else, but this, we were thinking how to do it. It would cost, about $30,000 if we had hired someone from outside, which the temple didn't have at all. And he said, I was just thinking of this. This will be my service to Krishna. And you just pay for the materials. So you pay for the actual window, but all the installation, everything, which is always the more expensive part, he said, I'll do it for free. And he did the whole thing from beginning to end, every single window. He put the best windows in. He did it from his heart. He did it, every single window he replaced free of charge. And he got us the windows at cost, the cost that the company pays, not the cost that's sold to the consumers. So the temple paid like $5,000-$6,000 for what would normally cost $30,000. And this man did it just as a service. And he kept coming to the temple, but then after 1 or 2 months, he disappeared. He just vanished. And when he left, we were feeling very heartbroken. Like we were thinking, well, we must have done something wrong, or we didn't cultivate him properly, and this is why he left. So I was speaking with Anuttama Prabhu, who's our GBC, and I told him about our experience, that how this person came and he did the windows. And by the way, he's not the only person. On many other things also it happened in terms of the roof and other things also. And so I told Anuttama Prabhu about this experience, and Anuttara Prabhu said, oh, so Krishna sent someone to change the windows. And then once he had done his service, he left. And so when he said that, it actually brought it in perspective that, oh no, actually, he probably, was not meant in some ways, or wasn't ready at that time to become a devotee. But Krishna sent him to do this work. And once he did this service for his own benefit and for the benefit of the movement and for the benefit of the devotees, for Krishna's benefit, once he had done that service, he left. So it was not that he left because something was wrong, but he left because, in fact, he came for a specific purpose. Having completed that service, now he would continue on his bhakti in some lifetime, or maybe in this lifetime, but Krishna, he still needed some time. So Krishna will direct our life if we surrender our senses to Krishna. If we serve Krishna, if we think about Krishna, if we hear Krishna, then Krishna will control our life. So now in this verse, in this chapter itself, there are some very key verses. And now we need to start actually looking at these verses. As I mentioned, chapter 1 is a bit too large almost to cover. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to look at one or two verses. I will reshare it again here. Just give me 1 second here. I need to go to chapter 1, text 1. Oops. So this is text 1. Text 1 is, it used to be actually a verse that in Bhakti Shastri one had to memorize. It's actually in some ways the most important verse of chapter 1. Text 1 is the most important verse of chapter 1. And it goes like this. Dhritarashtra vacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, and the word forward meaning is very important, but I'll first read the translation. O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So, Dhritarashtra is here speaking with Sanjay. Sanjay and Dhritarashtra having this wonderful conversation where Sanjay can see what is happening on the battlefield. He has this mystic power. Sanjay is Dhritarashtra's minister, and Dhritarashtra, who is the father of Duryodhana, the king at that time, who's sort of wanted this battle, he is asking Sanjay, after they assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So Srila Prabhupada points out that in Dhritarashtra's question to Sanjay, there are many deep meanings, many things that are indicative of the Pandavas' victory and also indicative of Dhritarashtra's desire that shows his consciousness. So Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, so he's referring to O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu. So here he says, Mamaka, my sons, and Pandava, the sons of Pandu, assembled in the place of pilgrimage. So first of all, he's making a distinction here between his sons and the sons of Pandu. Right? This was Dhritarashtra's problem, that he did not see the Pandavas as his own sons. This is the condition of Maya. Maya means duality, and Vaikuntha means non-duality. So he's saying my sons and the sons of Pandu. He's in materialistic consciousness, especially, they were his cousin sons. He should have just seen them as sons, but he's saying two parties here. And then where have they assembled? Dhritarashtra is very worried. They have assembled Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. He's saying they're assembled in the place of Dharma, Dharmakshetra, Why? Because Kurukshetra was a place of pilgrimage. To this day, it's a place of pilgrimage. Today, it's a place of pilgrimage primarily because Krishna was there and he spoke the Gita there and Arjuna is there. But since many millenniums, many millions of years, Kurukshetra was a place of pilgrimage where great sages would go. It was a holy place. And therefore, it was Dharmakshetra. And Dhritarashtra knows that he's on the side of adharma. He knows that his sons are adharmic. And therefore, he's thinking that this place will be beneficial. It'll be favorable for the Pandavas. Which may mean that my sons will not be victorious. If Dhritarashtra was on the side of dharma, if he felt he was doing the right thing, then why would he be concerned that it is dharma kshetra? But he knows that he's doing the wrong thing, yet he still is desiring the battle. And this is so much, it tells us so much about material consciousness, right? So much even here to sink in, that when a materialistic person, when they act in a materialistic way, they know that this is not beneficial for them. A person who steals or kills, or they know that it is not the right thing, but they are still doing it. Therefore, Krishna says it is lust only, Arjuna, that is the all-devouring sinful enemy in this world. Dhritarashtra is lusty for the kingdom, for his own children. And therefore, he's causing so many people to die. So that's one reason he's calling this place Dharmakshetra, because he's concerned and he's expressing his concern to Sanjay. Another reason is that he is so demoniac that he's thinking Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra, that this is a place of dharma. So because of the influence of dharma, this might change people's minds there. And as a result of that change of mind, they may not have the war. So one would think that Dhritarashtra would be very happy if the war would not happen. But just like we've experienced, right, when we go to a place of pilgrimage, we go to a holy place, our mind changes. The effect of the holy place or the temple is such that we may have bad thoughts, but those bad thoughts go away. We start feeling more love and compassion towards others because of the holy place. Like you go to Vrindavan, and all of a sudden, all the problems in life that you have, they go away because we're in Dharmakshetra. So Dhritarashtra, as we've experienced this, he's thinking they may go there and say, you know, why all this animosity? We are brothers. Let us not fight. Let us make a truce. And so he's concerned that because of the influence of the place of pilgrimage, the war may not happen, and that will cause peace. And Dhritarashtra wants the war to happen. He wants to get rid of the Pandavas altogether. And he's very confident because Bhishma, Drona, and Kripacharya are on the side of his son. He's confident. He's feeling that they will die, certainly. And if the war doesn't happen, then his purpose will not be fulfilled. So we see this is so relevant, chapter 1, to us today, because of we're living in a world that is plagued by war. And those who have wanted it, they don't want it not to happen. Though peace can be made, though a truce can be made so easily. I mean, we read the news, it's so obvious what a common common understanding could be, a neutral ground. They could make a compromise. It's so obvious. I don't want to speak it here so that there's no discussion on politics. But, you know, the two parties could make a compromise on a certain point. But they will not do so because they desire the war. So this first verse spoken by Dhritarashtra is very important. And so he's asking, what did they do? He's very eager to know. And Dhritarashtra is actually very happy. Later on, Prabhupada points out, he's actually very happy what Krishna tells Arjuna, that you should fight. When he hears that Arjuna does not want to fight, he becomes worried. but then he's very happy when Krishna tells him. Of course, Krishna is saying for a different purpose, and Dhritarashtra is wanting for a different purpose. So then chapter 1 takes place. Many points can be made on this. One point that I'll make on text 11. So Duryodhana then goes to all the warriors, different warriors, and he's describing how great his battle is. Let me read if his army is. Here, he goes to Dronacharya. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, Dronacharya, let me tell you the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta, called Purishrava, who are always victorious in battle. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. So he's giving Dronacharya the energy to fight, and then he is giving special respect to Bhishma, so that Bhishma doesn't feel sidelined, but rather feels that everyone is supporting him. And Prabhupada here in the purport, he points this out. He says, Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they have been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tries to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man. So everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. So he's doing both things. He's saying everyone has to support Bhishma, because Bhishma is the leader. But by saying that, he's also saying that Bhishma needs support. He's not the end-all be-all warrior. So everyone's feeling, we're also great warriors because we have to support him. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice when she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. So Bhishma and Drona were great souls, but they had, due to the arrangement of the Lord, they had remained quiet at very key points, and now in the battle, he was hoping for their full support. And so Duryodhana is confident of their support, but he is also feeling that he may not. He also feeling the need to further establish that support. And the point that I wanted to mention on this verse is that this is also Duryodhana teaching us that when we are, Prabhupada many times compared the Krishna conscious movement as a battle against Maya, right? That we're fighting against Maya and we have a mission to spread. And so this is also a good teaching for us. When Duryodhana is speaking, his motivation is different, but he's still speaking as an intelligent, we can still take the good out of his words. He's speaking as an intelligent leader, as a strategist. So just like he's asking all of his other warriors to give full support to Bhishma, in the same way, it is our duty as members of the Krishna conscious movement to give full support to the great devotees of the Lord, right? We all have our different roles in this movement, and not all of us will be frontline preachers, or we will not be leading preaching projects. In other words, we will not have our own preaching in some ways. But our duty is to support those who are preaching, and that is equally important. They are fighting in some ways, but our role is to support their fight. Just like in a Sankirtan party, on a book distribution party, there are some devotees who are going out on book distribution. They're doing book distribution all day long, and they have a nature for it, they have a knack for it. But other devotees, they don't have the nature, and they stay behind and they cook for the Sankirtan devotees. When you have young people going out, working hard, distributing books, they get very hungry. And so they come back, like on the Radha Damodar party, and a few devotees would stay back and they would cook wonderful prasad for them. They would also cook for the guests who would come as a result of that preaching. So their service is as important and noteworthy as the service of the people who are distributing books. They're as valuable because both are performing equal service. The one who is doing the service and the one who is supporting in that service are both equally potent. Prabhupada, in one purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he writes that not everyone can be a spiritual master, and not everyone is a spiritual master. But if the disciple helps the spiritual master fulfill his mission, then the disciple becomes as glorious or as dear to Krishna as a spiritual master. Although the disciple never thinks in that way, but they become as dear to the Lord. And just like the spiritual master goes back to Godhead, Krishna also takes the disciple back to Godhead because of their support. So, very important point here. Then Arjun, Duryodhana is feeling great elation by seeing this great battle. This is the mentality of the materialist. He is the ideal example of the materialist. He's feeling so much excitement and happiness by seeing finally we get to fight and war. And Arjuna, his mindset becomes completely different. When he comes there, when he reaches that point and sees the army, his mind, his heart begins to sink. Arjuna vacha sunayor abayor madhye ratham sthapaya me chuta yavadeta niriksheham yodhu kamanavastitan karmaya sahayodhavyam asmin rana samudhyame. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. So he wants to see, and he is not seeing out of aggrandizement. He is seeing out of concern. Who must I fight? Who must I kill due to this fight? Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Right? Duryodhana was evil, and Arjuna does not spare any words. He's saying the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharata, thus having been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. Thus Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. So what is Arjuna's response? His response is one of compassion. Arjun says, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. My whole body is trembling. My hair is standing on end. My bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon." So his response is one of great lamentation, great compassion. And before we read any further, I'm going to switch back to the slides. So I actually didn't read that part due to a time, but the first 11 texts are the battle and omens of the Pandavas' victory. We saw Duryodhana's conversation with Dronacharya, his anxiety about the outcome of the battle, and his expertise in political diplomacy. And then in text 12 to 26, the war begins. The conches have already been blown. This is the part I didn't read. You can read it. And towards the end, after the conches have been blown, which means that the fighting has officially started, Arjuna asks Krishna that you bring my chariot in the middle of the two armies. For me also, this is a very great message here, that it's never too late, right? The conches have been blown, but Arjun still thought, no, let me think again. Am I doing the right thing? So now the war is beginning, and Arjun is now expressing his arguments, his concerns for not fighting. He's now expressing, he's about to express, after we see his heart sinks and he begins to shiver and be distressed, he presents 4 arguments to Krishna why he should not fight in this battle. And these 4 arguments are as follows. Very important. This is the heart of this chapter. Please listen attentively. The first argument is one of compassion. Arjuna, as a soft-hearted, gentle devotee, does not want to kill. This compassion is good, but is not properly guided by intelligence. So his first argument is one of compassion, that let us not kill them, because let us be compassionate towards them. The second argument is one of enjoyment. He says, even if we forget about compassion and we want to do this to enjoy the kingdom, he says, what enjoyment will we gain by losing everyone who we might want to enjoy this kingdom with, by killing everyone who we want to enjoy it with? Just like, people have an enjoyment when they can show off their wealth to others. If you have great wealth, but there's no one to show it to, there's no pleasure in it. So you become king, but everyone who you wanted to show it to dies, or everyone you wanted that they should enjoy it dies. What is the use? All possible outcomes in the battle bring only suffering. Arjun feels the war is not worth it for his personal satisfaction. In the material consciousness, both victory and defeat bring suffering. And this is the problem with war. The Mahabharata actually makes this very clear after the Gita, the sections of the Mahabharata. One of the messages of the Mahabharata is that in war, both sides lose. Everyone loses. Even the side that is triumphant also loses. We see in the battle of Kurukshetra, at the end, Duryodhana lost, but it's not that the Pandavas won, right? At the end, they also lost all their children. All All 6 of their children, they lost. Not a single one was left. So war means defeat for both sides. This is why war should be avoided at all costs. And this is why war should never be done for enjoyment, but only for the purpose of dharma, to establish righteousness, because no one will enjoy. If we're doing it for that reason, we'll never enjoy, right? So only for the establishment of dharma. Arjun argues that it is sinful to kill his superiors and relatives. So his third argument is one of sinful reaction. What about the karma? If we kill our superiors and relatives, what will be our destination? The fourth argument is the destruction of family. That by fighting, all family traditions will be destroyed. Something that we see, I mean, this is, again, Gita is so relevant for no other time, for all times, and especially for our time, right? Even if only a few thousand people die in the war, so many families are being separated, destroyed, ruined. You don't know, will they ever meet again? They're being separated. Like, it's such a war. All the men die, at least historically it was pretty much the men. And the women and the children are left. And Arjun, in this section, he tells us very clearly what happens, what results from the women and children being left unprotected, without their families broken, with the men dead. What happens? Arjun says that fighting in the war will ruin society by destroying families and their religious and moral traditions. So Arjun is presenting these 4 arguments to Krishna because he does not want to fight. And in the Gita, Krishna is responding to these 4 arguments. Krishna's response is a response to these 4 arguments. And there's also actually a 5th argument that Arjun uses as not to fight, and that is indecision. He uses indecision. I'm not able to decide, therefore I won't fight. He's using indecision as a reason not to fight, which is a little bit of a fallacy, because oftentimes we do that ourselves. We don't know what is better to do, and therefore we don't do the right thing. So indecision is also part of it. So Prabhupada here mentions something. The 2nd chapter of the Gita and the rest of the Gita clearly established that Arjuna's compassion is misplaced, right? And this is due to weakness of heart, that this is not the right thing. He should fight, he should do his duty. But in chapter 1, Prabhupada points out that Arjuna's compassion is also his qualification to be Krishna's friend and to be the disciple and listener of the Bhagavad Gita. That it is precisely his compassion that makes him qualified to be Krishna's student. And precisely the reason why Krishna speaks the Gita to Arjuna particularly, rather than so many others who are there. Because this soft-heartedness pleases the Lord. Now, given that he's so soft-hearted and given that he has compassion, then Krishna tells him of an even higher principle, that you fight for the Lord. But spiritual life begins from this mood of selflessness. Prabhupada says this is the difference between the contrast between Duryodhana's material consciousness and Arjuna's spiritual devotional consciousness. The materialist is selfish. Materialist thinks what is best for me. The devotee, the fundamental quality of a devotee is selflessness, that what is best for others, compassion. They both are in the battlefield, but they both respond in completely different ways. Duryodhana thinks, what is best for me? Arjuna thinks, let them, he says, with arms raised, let them attack us and kill us. But let us not kill them. And that is, he is perfectly illustrating, he is a perfect example of the Vaishnava quality of Paradukha Dukhi. The Vaishnava quality, Prabhupada writes, of, of giving precedence to the happiness of others before our own happiness. So here in this verse, in this text, Prabhupada describes the nature of Arjuna's compassion and how this was good. This is something that we should emulate. Coming to this level is very difficult, and it is only a pure devotee or extraordinary soul can exhibit such qualities. This is why we heard the Mahabharata last time, to understand that Arjuna has every reason to be angry with them, has every reason to kill them. And he's the greatest, most powerful warrior of all time. So he's the last one who should put up with any nonsense, right? I mean, if you're not powerful, then it's very easy to be compassionate. If you're not powerful, in some ways you have no option but to be compassionate. And so you may read the scriptures, everything, just to appease your heart. But imagine being in the most powerful position in the world, being the greatest warrior in the world, and knowing that you can, destroy the people who are mistreating you, but then thinking like Arjuna. That is greatness. So this verse, here's text 28, the next section that this starts with. Arjuna vacha drishve mam svajanam Krishna yutsam samupastitam sidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishushyati. Arjun said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Any man... Okay, you can't see it?
No, we can't see it. Which verse is that, Prabhu?
Okay, I will then share the feeling. It doesn't automatically do that. Okay. This is chapter 1, text 28. Thank you, Prabhu, for letting me know. Arjun said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Purport. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver, and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjun, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. Again, this sentence. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyasi bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunaistatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena satidhavato bahi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods, but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. So here Prabhupada mentioned something very nice. He says that those who are non-devotees, however advanced he may be in material qualifications, by education and culture, lacks in good qualities. But a devotee of the Lord has all the qualities of the demigod, right? The devotees of the Lord have all the good qualities. So sometimes we'll see that the materialists, they will, they will act like very cultured people. Here in our community in Chicago, right? We have many nice devotees, many amazing devotees who by their education or in terms of their wealth are not very wealthy. And they're also, they're also like, one would say coming from families that are, they had tough families or just, not very cultured backgrounds. Let's put it this way. And many times, people who visit the temple are very wealthy, coming from very cultured backgrounds. And this is true in all temples, any temple. I'm just giving an example. And so those who are from cultured backgrounds, they will sometimes like, towards the devotees, they'll show that, how cultured they are, and devotees will be, leading ordinary lives, trying to struggle in their preaching activities or whatnot. But we see that on the surface, these so-called cultured families, materialistic families, that externally there's that culture, but internally there's such materialism there, there's no love there in that heart. Everything is perfect externally, nice education, wealthy, great culture, but it's all satisfying my senses, all for the satisfaction of their own senses. Like Prabhupada gives the example of Hiranyakashipu, that Hiranyakashipu was actually a very cultured, elevated man. And when he calls Prahlad on his lap, he begins to kiss Prahlad's head and smell his head, just like parents do out of affection. When the children are very small, they have this special smell coming out of their head. We all know this, right? So, he was smelling his head, kissing his head. But the moment Prahlad began praising Lord Vishnu, he threw him off of his lap and was ready to kill him. And well, of course, he's a demon, right? What else do you expect? He doesn't like Vishnu. But one would think that at least he would be nice to his son. Prahlad is his son, after all. He's a little baby. And he was just kissing him. But Prabhupada says this. He gives that as an example. He says, this is the example of a materialist, that as soon as their sense enjoyment is at risk, their mood changes. And then their true colors become manifest. In the same way, in the material world, externally, we'll see materialists are so nice, and there'll be nice neighbors, they'll be nice, they'll recycle, they'll, come out and help you when, your power goes out, and they'll come and mow your lawn. And sometimes devotees won't do that. And you'll think, very confused, this is materialist, he's so nice to me, devotees not being nice to me. But it's all there until their sense enjoyment is not at risk. And I teach ethics, and in technical language, this is called ethical egoism, where ethical egoism is also ethics, but that is a form of ethics in which you do good for others. You're a good person, you do good for others, as long as it is also good for you. As long as it doesn't come in the middle of your sense enjoyment, they do good. And that's actually a system of ethics that people say it's not very good. I mean, it's a lower form of it. It's called egoism or ethical egoism. You do good to others and you're doing good, but as long as it's not bad for you. So this neighbor is helping you because you're his neighbor and they're helping you, but they know that you'll help them. Or even if they're not thinking that way, they're doing it because you're their neighbor. But real as opposed to that, the real ethical principle is that you do good even if it's not good for you. Even if there is a, there's a problem for you, you're still doing good for others. And the materialists will not do that. They'll do good, but only as long as it's good for them. But the devotee, and we see how devotees come through, they will do good even if it is uncomfortable for them. Their heart is so soft, and you experience this with devotees, that they will do good selflessly. There's no reason, because of the nature of their heart. So all this materialistic culture is ethical egoism. It's just based on the fundamental principle of one's own sense enjoyment. Hiranyakashipu was loving and taking care of Prahlad as long as he was worshiping him. But as soon as he saw this son is not worshiping me, is worshiping God, then of course he doesn't even care about Vishnu, but he didn't even care about his own son, because it's not true compassion. Whereas the devotees, though they have no material qualification, they have all the good qualities of the demigods because of their devotion to Lord Krishna. So I will stop here. I think we have completed. Next time we will continue. Actually, chapter 2 begins with the 4 arguments, so we'll spend more time on it next time. Krishna, and chapter 2 deals with each one after the other. We will stop at this point, and now we can have discussion and questions. And I would like to hear your comments and realizations. Thank you. You can raise your hand if you have a comment or question. The hand on the chat, you can raise that, and then we can talk more. Okay, Madhava Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So Prabhuji, my question is that, so I've watched the VR Chopra Mahabharata series also. So I was just curious if in reality, how you were saying, we were giving the example of Duryodhana is teaching us how he was very supportive of Bhishma Dev because he was the key factor for their success. But did it actually happen that Bhishma Dev told the Kauravas that I won't kill the Pandavas, I'll only kill their armies and all the other people who are supporting them? And if that was the case, then how would that affect, Duryodhana's mentality?
Yes. So Duryodhana knew that Bhishma will do everything for him other than directly kill the Pandavas. Right? So he will, just like we can do an analogy here. There's nothing wrong with this analogy that, the United States has told Ukraine, we'll provide you weapons, we'll provide you guidance, we'll provide you intelligence, but we will not fight on the battle. Similar to Krishna also, right? Krishna said, I will not take up arms, but I'll be there with you throughout. Of course, Krishna's not taking arms, or taking arms is the same thing. But in the case of Bhishma, he was going to fight. There's so many warriors on the battle. And so Duryodhana knew that even if he doesn't kill the Pandavas directly, if he takes care of everyone else, all my other fighters are there for the Pandavas. So even then, he is invaluable for me. When Bhishma would start fighting, like he would destroy phalanxes of the Pandavas' army within moments. This is why Krishna actually becomes very angry, because he sees that Bhishma is just like cutting down the Pandavas' army like anything, and Arjuna isn't, he's not killing Bhishma. And he said, you have to do something. I mean, look at what this person is doing. So Duryodhana, I think it was well known. My own understanding, I don't have a reference for it. It is well known that Bhishma would not kill the Pandavas. But the very fact that he was fighting on his side, he was so valuable to Duryodhana that Duryodhana was like, if I have this person, my whole problem is solved. Duryodhana didn't think that he was any less powerful than the Pandavas. So he did feel that he could fight them.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
If there are no questions, then I can cover a little more of chapter 1. I purposely actually stopped because I thought that there might be some more questions. Today, everyone is very quiet. I guess it's chapter 1. It's mainly descriptive, so less philosophy.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I really found the ethical egoism especially very interesting. I have never heard of that. And that was a very interesting, to have just, brought about that topic. And that I am in the Mahabharata especially, yeah.
Yes. So in terms of ethical egoism, this is the main application for that is the difference between a devotee and a materialist state of mind, right? So a devotee, they sometimes don't do good, but ultimately they are doing good not for their own benefit, but for the service of the Lord. And they're willing to be selfless. They're willing to sacrifice their own benefit for the service of Krishna. The materialists, they also do good, but it's only to the point that is good for their senses. So when there's time to actually truly sacrifice, then you see the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, right? Then there's a big difference there. So yeah, so that is, thank you for that comment.
Amazing point, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I will bring this screen here. This is a very important section of chapter 1. So after Arjuna expresses his soft-heartedness to Krishna, so his first argument is of compassion. So after he expresses that look, it's better I die in this battle than if they kill me, because so many lives will be taken. Then Arjuna expresses the argument of family traditions being destroyed, and also the sinful reaction that's also related in this. So I'll go up here. Can you see my Veda-based screen? Yes, Prabhu. Yes. So I'll start with this verse here, text 35. O Govinda, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the 3 worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? So Arjuna is saying, you're asking me to fight for even this kingdom, but I'm not willing to fight with them even in exchange for the 3 worlds. What is a kingdom for me? So for a devotee, a kingdom is something very small. And so in this verse, what argument is Arjuna presenting? What among the 4 arguments that we talked about, which argument is he making here? The 4 arguments were compassion, enjoyment, sinful reaction, and destruction of family tradition. So which argument is he referring to in text 32 to 35?
Sinful reaction.
Family tradition?
In this set of verses,
Pleasure?
yes, enjoyment. He's saying, I mean, what enjoyment is there? He's saying, right?
Sure.
Of what avail to kingdom for all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on the battlefield. I mean, you get a nice house so your family can enjoy in that house. If you're single, why would you get a big house? And then in the process of getting that house, if all your family members die, then why you won't choose the house, you'll choose the family members. So it's very common sense what Arjun is saying. He's saying this kingdom is pleasurable because we have friends and relatives. If all of them die, what am I going to do with this big empty palace? So this is the argument of enjoyment. Then text 36, some of you mentioned that. Now he's directly going on the one of sinful reactions. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? So this is an argument of sin. Sin will overcome us. And he's making the point that when we are sinful, we can never be happy. So happiness and sin are connected with one another. The reaction destroys us. And you see that in people's lives, that when they do wrong, we don't have to worry about them. Their being wrong destroys themselves. They themselves annihilate themselves by their sinful reactions. They're unhappy. So sin will overcome us. So don't do this. And then 37 to 38. O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? This verse is so beautiful. Again, this is not just the history of the Mahabharata. These verses are meant to elevate our consciousness. We have to read these as a way of how do I apply it on my own life. O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? There's one famous motivational speaker, Wayne Dyer, and he says that what others do to you is their karma. How you respond is your karma. What others do to you is their karma. How you respond is your karma. So Arjun is saying exactly the same thing. Their hearts are overcome by greed. Yes, they're at fault. Granted, there's no question in Arjun's mind that his relatives are not evil. He was there at the time of the gambling match. He's agreeing, yes, he's recognizing they're evil. But now the question is, do I want to be a devotee or not? Do I want to respond in the way that a devotee responds? Why should I engage in those same things? To destroy a family is a great crime, right? It's a great crime. Why should we engage in activities that will destroy thousands of families, where people will be strewn on the battlefield? And then, so this is one of which one? Which of the four would these verses be, from 37 to 38?
Compassion.
Compassion? Yes, I like that. We should have the compassion. And also now he's starting to talk about family traditions, right? Destroying family traditions and the sinful reaction. It's sort of a acts of sin. He's talking about sinful reaction. So all three of them here, I would say. Then he describes, well, how is it? He's specifying how is it that family traditions are destroyed? With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. So this is actually a course in sociology, what Arjun is speaking here in these final verses. He says how he says that in all ancient cultures, there were family traditions and there are family dynasties, which oftentimes we call the extended family. And in the modern culture, materialistic culture, we have nuclear families, right? Now, though this is a material thing and it's a social culture, but there's a benefit. There's a reason why in previous ages they had these family dynasties, because family traditions are kept alive when the elders of the family are there, when there's, you know, the family connections, the elders of the family, because then people out of shame will not do the wrong thing. Because there's that, you know, just like in India, you know, until now divorce was unheard of. Why? Because there's so much family support. You know, there's the elders and they help. The husband and wife are actually the ones who don't know what they're doing because they're in it for the first time. It's their first marriage. It's their, you know, they don't know what they're doing. But the elders have been through it. They're now older. They've gone through, you know, what it is to have children, what it is to, you know, face this problem or that problem. They've seen it all, done it all. So they keep that family together. And most importantly, they keep the religious principles of that family together. Just their presence protects them from gross sinful activities like illicit sex. We are protected by them, right? By illicit sex, by gambling, by intoxication, meat eating. This becomes a natural protection. Now, of course, if the whole dynasty falls down, that happens, but then there's a real problem. But generally, the elders were keeping the youngers in religious principles, and then the younger became elder, and they were keeping the elders. Like this, the cycle was going on. And in this way, the family traditions were kept alive. They're kept going. So, so Arjun, being the king, being the leader, he's concerned about the religious principles of society. He's concerned that, you know, what will happen? What will happen to people's spirituality, to the religion in society, if we break, if, you know, if there's no fathers, uncles, everyone was on the battle, everyone was fighting. And who is going to be left in previous society? Only the men were allowed to go on the battlefield. The women and children will be left. And we're getting news reports coming out of Ukraine, Russia, how the soldiers are raping the women that are left. The women and children, they're resorting to prostitution because of not having any money, and people are taking advantage of them. They know that they are in need, and so they're bringing them into prostitution. All the big sinful activities come when that, the way this is actually sacred. This family system that Krishna has made is very sacred because it protects people from irreligion. I remember also, right, like on my, you know, in my relatives, that when the elders passed away, the culture in those families changed drastically. Like the kids were watching a lot more television. This was not a devotee family. This was just a normal. So, you know, most people in civilization as a whole will not become devotees. So therefore, Prabhupada established Varnashram. And therefore, we have the Varnashram system. We have rules of religion that people who don't completely dedicate their life, at least they follow those things. So though the devotional culture is not there, but you could say the Varnashram culture was there before. And after the elders died, more TV, the kids were out of hand. They were starting to have boyfriends and girlfriends. Meat started to come in the family, like in terms of chicken and fish. You will actually see that those principles of piousness, of the mode of goodness, that will go away. So goodness is the starting point for spirituality. Spirituality is the best, but if spirituality is not there, at least goodness is there. But that goodness turns into passion and ignorance. So even in Western cultures, in Christian cultures in America, Europe, you saw that people were going to church. People had, you know, days on which they would not eat meat. They would do music together as a family. They would do art together. The enjoyment was in the mode of goodness. And when the elders were gone, then that became more passion, ignorance, men just sitting in bars, wasting away their life, coming home, beating their wives. This is all mode of ignorance. When irreligion is prominent in the family, very famous verse, in my time we had to memorize this verse also. It's part of the 108 verses of memorization, not the 27 that we do, but very famous one. Prabhupada quotes it often. Adharma bhivavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriya strishu dushtashu vashnaya jayate varna sankara. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Arjuna, O Krishna, when irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. So in this purport, Prabhupada says many things about the nature of women, something that we won't get into today. We're now pretty much out of time. But one of the things that he says, that Arjun here is saying, is that the way Krishna's made this world is that the man protects the woman and the woman protects the man. Right? It's not just actually one way. We think, oh, Vedas are biased. No, it's not just that the man protects the woman, but the woman also protects the men. How do they protect them? Well, when a man is married, then he is protected from sinful activities. He is, due to marriage, he will not engage in illicit sex life. This is in the Bhagavatam, that a married man can travel anywhere without fear. Whereas a renunciate has to be more careful because of a fear of fall down. A woman will also protect a man in terms of religious principles. The women throughout Vedas, they guide their men when they become too angry or too violent. They say, stop, this is not good for you. This is not religious principles. We see Mother Sita. At one point, she is telling Lord Ram that now you're in the forest, give up your weapons. Let's live like mendicants. So even Sita Devi would speak of religious principles to Lord Ram. And in the same way, the men protect the women. Because when women do not have protection, they become open to exploitation. Like I was mentioning here in the war and things. Just like men have to accept the protection of women, the women also need that protection. This is why the Vedas say this. This is why we are not exactly in touch or in step with modern views on this, because they are more easily exploited than men are, and this is a fact, right? They're more easily taken advantage of. If you look statistically, there's far more women that are raped by men than men who are raped by women. Men also get raped, but it's in far less numbers. So Arjun is concerned, if all the men die in the battlefield, the women will not be protected. They will become polluted. And that pollution is not just in terms of physical protection, but even mental protection. Because Prabhupada says in the purport, women are more easily misled. It is true. They accept things more easily. This is why they become devotees actually more easily, but they're also more easily influenced. Yeah, that's the word, influenced. And so they will give up religious principles if they don't have that backing. They may give up. And from that degradation of womanhood, what happens? The greatest pain of modern civilization, and this can be a whole topic in of itself. Again, so many amazing lessons in chapter 1. Each one of you can do a separate seminar on it and on different themes of it. That the greatest ill of modern society is unwanted progeny. Children who know that they're unwanted, children who feel that they're unwanted, and they become the future criminals. This is a sociological fact. A child that's not wanted or is pushed around, it's not loved, does not have loving parents, will grow up to be unless of course they become a devotee or they work on themselves. It's not all of them, but they become very difficult. They have difficult lives. So unwanted progeny comes because when there's illicit sex, then there's unwanted progeny. So here we see the intelligence of Arjuna, that Arjun has so much to be angry about, but he is not acting on the platform of his anger. He is not reacting to the situation. He is thinking very deeply about the consequences of every action that he's doing. And that is a great devotee of the Lord. He's seeing what will happen. Fine, the war is right, but will the result be okay? Will there be unwanted progeny? What will happen to all the women, to all the family traditions? An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down. He's even thinking of the ancestors. Who will give that pin? Who will do ceremonies for those who are dead? Because the performances of offering them food and water are entirely stopped. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. Very heavy. He's saying, and actually many of the great philosophers noticed this. Confucius also said this, that a good society is dependent on good families. He saw the reason for social disharmony to be ultimately down to the issue of family harmony. And a solution to bring social harmony was to develop or build strong families. So Arjun is saying, when you destroy the family tradition, community projects are destroyed. There's unwanted children, and so they will not participate in community projects. Family welfare activities are devastated. The whole society, it'll take decades to rebuild Ukraine, right? They win the war or they don't. But community projects, family welfare activity, everything becomes just devastated. And then he's saying that the people who destroy these family traditions destroy always in hell. So as devotees, actually, it is our great responsibility to help devotee families. It is our great responsibility to make strong families and to help one another in this process, because that is prosperity. That is the way of making a prosperous movement. Just like we see the Mormons, right? They have very strong families. So their movement is spreading. It's the fastest growing religion in the world, Mormonism, because people see their family. You may have not even heard of them, but in the western part of the United States, they're very, very popular. This is a great responsibility, because when we produce an unwanted child, we are also we are also encumbering their spiritual progress. And this is why Arjun is taking it so seriously, because in good families, there's more opportunity for spiritual culture, for spiritual advancement. And by destroying this, like we see the demoniac leaders, when they do that, they will dwell in hell, because they are destroying the spiritual progress of the members of society. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Sanjay said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So what an amazing scene, right? Krishna is there, Arjuna is there, the greatest warrior in all of history, Arjun. He puts his bow aside and he sits on the battle, his mind overcome with grief. This verse here, text 45, greatly reminds me of the example of Haridas Thakur. When Haridas Thakur was being beaten in so many marketplaces, but he doesn't resist. So Arjun was like this, right? That is the mood of a devotee. And this shows that even a devotee is a warrior, or a devotee is a sadhu, brahmana. Either way, they have the same mindset. Okay, so I'll stop here. And if there's any final questions, I can answer that. Otherwise, we can end.
I just want to make a comment. I
Yes.
just want to thank you for sharing that darshan is not us seeing the deity, it's us being seen by the deity. That really was extremely humbling for me and gave me a lot of perspective in serving my own Gornitai, because that is not at all how I have ever once perceived darshan. And I think that that's really important misconception for me, at least, to fix in my own mind so I can have a better mood going into service. So yeah, I just wanted to really thank you for that, because that was very valuable to me.
Thank you for highlighting that point. Actually, that was also a revelation for me when I read it. I said, oh, wow, the darshan actually means being seen by the Lord. Because sometimes, especially in India, we go to the temples and they're so packed full, you cannot even see the deity. In very big temples, people stand in line for many days, and they'll go in front, and then someone behind them happens to be a very big guy or something, immediately pushes them forward because there's so much push from the back. It's like a stampede, right? And they lament that I waited so many days. I went in front of the deity and I couldn't even see the deity. Sometimes they can't even see the Lord. There's so much rush, but that's not important. We now understand. It's more important that the deity saw us.
Mhm.
So, yes.
Yes, I can relate being so short. Any concert I've ever been to, Paul stands in front of me, but now I know that, you know, with Krishna, as long as I'm in the room as the deity, I've, you know, been awarded that. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you. There's
Yeah, Hare Krishna,
Balachandra
Prabhuji.
Prabhu. Yes.
Sorry, Prabhuji, that is the whole family's name, because
Yes.
we take Guru Maharaj Darshan. That's how the name should be there in the Zoom. So
I
I
see.
put like that. So
Yeah.
this is Smita Gandharvika. When you are sharing that realization about that, that when we are taking darshan, it's not like we see the Lord, Lord should see us. It makes very much sense, right? In front of the Lord, many people go, like even a blind goes in front of the Lord. Blind cannot see the Lord, but Lord is seeing the blind, right? I mean, the person who is blind cannot be seen. He cannot take darshan, but still he goes to the temple and he prays for his mercy. So, but that makes really a sense, Prabhuji. I could just want to share that realization. Very beautiful class, very cool.
Thank you for your very encouraging words. And yes, what about the blind people? You bring such a nice point. They may not see the Lord, but the Lord sees them. So very nice. Kokila Prabhu Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So nice to hear from you after like the gap that we had. So I actually went to, the Tirupati Balaji temple, and as you said, that, we waited there for hours and hours, and we couldn't, possibly see the details very clearly. And we were like, I always had this limitation that, we went there, we stayed there for so many hours just waiting, and we couldn't see the Lord. But now that you said that this, bell, like it just points out that it's not important, but it's important that the Lord sees us. So it's really, really, really very beautiful point, Prabhuji. And I have a question also, Prabhuji, if you may allow. So,
Yes.
as you mentioned that Dhritarashtra is known that uh, that he will win, and yet, but how I mean, like I have like we have read that Dhritarashtra was a great well-read person. He was a Kshatriya, so obviously he had learned all about the politics and everything. So how could he not understand this little point that when his sons are adharmic, then how are they going to win in the battle of Kurukshetra, that is a Dharma Kshetra? So that really amazes me, and I was just thinking if I can ask you that, how can we understand this better, Prabhuji? Thank you so much.
Yes, very nice question. Many reasons, but one of the key reasons is because of Dhritarashtra's feeling of envy. And this is why envy is a very dangerous thing, and it can lead us to very bad situations in life. It's something we have to avoid at all costs, because Dhritarashtra was envious of his brother. Dhritarashtra was actually the elder brother. He was supposed to have the kingdom, but because he was blind, his younger brother became king. And this really always bothered him. It's like, why was I born blind? He could not resolve the results of his past karma. He became blind because of the past karma, and he couldn't come to terms with it. He was always like, why me? Just like we always feel, why am I unfortunate? My friend or my brother or my sister is fortunate. But that is due to your own doing. It's due to our own past misdeeds that we get a reaction or something like that. Rather than realizing that, he became very envious of his younger brother, Pandu. And because he was envious of his younger brother, he was also very envious of his younger brother's children, which were the Pandavas. And envy destroys our sight, it destroys our knowledge, it destroys our adherence to dharma. Because envy is, it burns. It's just like Kaikeyi, right? She became envious of her step-wife and the children of her step-wife, Lord Ram. He was envious of the Pandavas and their power and their goodness, and he wanted to see them destroyed, though he knew that his own son was on the side of adharma. So envy and jealousy is something, actually all the qualities, material qualities, can be engaged in Krishna's service and thus purified. Prabhupada says we can engage lust in Krishna's service by getting married and having Krishna conscious children. We can engage greed in service by being greedy for spiritual advancement. But the one quality Prabhupada says we cannot engage in Krishna's service is envy. That simply has to be given up, because envy is the very reason why we leave the spiritual world. We're envious of Krishna. Why is Krishna God? I should be God. Because our nature is our natural constitutional position is one of being servant, of being of service. So it's due to his envy.
And Prabhuji, I have a follow-up question with that one. So how should we put a check that we are not envious of others first? And the second question is like, sometimes we feel that others are envious of us, and which disturbs our sadhana as well, because we talk about them and then it's the cycle of Vaishnava Pradha and so on and so forth. So how should we go about in those two situations and keep a check that we don't do the things that people are doing to us? So
yes, well, one way is, first and foremost, we should be worried about ourselves. Like I was giving you the quote of, what others do is their karma, how we respond is ours. So we are only responsible for what we do. We may be concerned how another person is doing and what karma they're going to get, but that is their karma, that is their purification, that is they're going to learn through their life. But a devotee among all reversals is still able to be, Prabhupada says, exact quote from Prabhupada, among all reversals, a devotee is still able to be a glorious devotee on account of his surrender to Krishna, on account of his, staying a devotee in all circumstances. So what other people are doing should not affect, that's a false argument. We should always remain a glorious devotee of Krishna by being like Arjuna, not wanting revenge, by doing only what Krishna desires us to do. And then we can avoid envy and falling in the pitfall of envy when we're opening to listen to others, right? Everyone's problem, who fell down, their problem was they stopped listening to others. Ravana stopped listening to Vibhishan. He didn't listen to Mandodari. He didn't listen to his ministers. Everyone was telling him, don't fight with Ram. Don't steal his wife. This is going to be your end. It's even been predicted. This was predicted, and he knew that. And people around him knew that Ravana would fall when he abducts the wife of someone else. So all of his well-wishers were telling him, don't fight this war. Fight every other war, but don't fight this battle, and return Sita. But he could not listen. Everyone was telling Kaikai, don't do this. She could not listen. In the same way, everyone is telling Dhritarashtra, don't do this, but he cannot listen. Bhishma told him, Dronacharya told him, Kripacharya told him, Vidura tells him. Everyone's telling him, don't do this, but he cannot listen. So as long as we're open to listening to others, we're open to feedback, because we recognize that I'm not perfect, then we'll be safe. If we think we're perfect, then we'll fall in that trap. So feelings of envy will come, feelings of jealousy will come. We will make the wrong decisions. We will be greedy. But we have no shortage of good people around us. And one thing a nice devotee told me, he said, when everyone around you tells you the same thing, then it's a time to start listening, right? Because you've gotten to a point where even those who are materialistic sometimes agree that, well, even in your own interest, it's not a good thing to do. Like everyone around Ravan was not a devotee, but even the materialist could understand that, look, based upon, the rules of the game, you're going to lose this war because you have a curse on your head. Ravan was cursed in that way, but he still was so proud he could not listen, and he fell down. So these two things I would say. First of all is seeing what is our duty, and secondly, being all ears, allowing hearing what others around us are saying.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. I've been really thinking hard on this, and this really touched me. And thank you so much for the insights. I will try to understand other perspective as well, and why and what the situation they might be in. And you're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for guiding us so well. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I'm really, really grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your very nice comments and questions. And we all face these situations in our life, so we're all in it together. And one thing is that this is the positive thing of suffering, that when devotees suffer, they become soft-hearted. So Arjuna is very soft-hearted, we see, because of his greatness, but also because it's almost opposite in the case of a devotee. The materialists, the more they suffer, the more they become angry or hard-hearted. The devotees, when they go through difficulties in life, they actually become more soft-hearted. Then when others go through them, they realize, I was just in that ship, a year ago. So why should I judge this devotee? I should feel for them, or I should help them, because we all go through it. Krishna puts everyone through it because this is the purpose of the material world. So yes, very nice point. There's a question in the chat box. If you would like to unmute yourself and just ask it, we can do that, and then we'll end. It's by Rukmavati Devi Dasi, Rukmavati Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada mentioning that women are less intelligent So is that the reason you have given is they get easily influenced? So is that the reason Prabhupada also mentioned that women being less intelligent?
So the question is, Prabhupada mentions in the purport to that verse that we read that women are less intelligent. So what is his reason for doing that? Is that due to being easily influenced? Why Srila Prabhupada mentions that and says that, only Srila Prabhupada knows. So it is wrong for us to speculate. As devotees, we can read that and understand it in the way that we understand Prabhupada, in the sense that Prabhupada is speaking, and it's up to us individually to Prabhupada will speak to us individually in different ways. So that will mean different things for different people. But one of the things that Prabhupada makes very clear is that once a woman is a devotee, she is not any less intelligent than a man. And also Prabhupada is not making a statement that that women by definition are less intelligent than men. A man who's a drunkard and is sinful is certainly more less intelligent than a woman who is pious and God conscious. There's no question about it, and Prabhupada mentions this. Prabhupada was also very, very respectful of women during his lifetime. He treated them very gently. So why Prabhupada says this is could be due to the fact that women are more easily influenced or misguided. That could be one reason. That's what Arjuna is concerned about. That's what he's saying, and therefore he may be saying that. And it could be for other reasons as well. But again, I'm not the judge for that. I'm not the one to say, well, this is why Prabhupada says this. Prabhupada, in his own books, he kind of expands on it, or he says in different places, he says different things. And he also mentions very clearly that men also have very clear weaknesses. He also mentions, how a woman protects a man. This is why I mentioned that. And without that protection, men are very prone to degradation. Men are also more violent. Men, tend to fight more and kill more, statistically speaking. Men are, are less in tune emotionally with others. Women figure out more clearly what other persons are thinking. So there's many things that he says about many people, and it's meant to help us progress. The purpose is that in mature life, when someone says something like this, their purpose is to undermine the other person. When a devotee, pure devotee like that says something, it's meant to elevate the other person. It's meant to help them recognize, okay, this could be a weakness or area that we have to be careful. Let us being conscious of that, elevate ourselves, knowing that. So Prabhupada's purpose in saying it is always to liberate us. He's doing it to uplift women. And like I said, he mentioned that once they're devotees, then they're most intelligent. They're not less intelligent. On the material sphere, it's up to us to decide. Do we feel, do we agree with Prabhupada or we don't? But that's clearly in the material sphere. And Prabhupada is very, very, Prabhupada makes it clear that both men and women can attain the highest perfection. Okay, it's 10:30. So maybe some very short comments or questions. First, Anita, her hand was up first, and then Brandy, and then we'll end.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Anita Mataji? We cannot hear you. Just unmute. Please unmute here. We cannot hear you. Please unmute. Yeah.
I did, Prabhu. Yes.
Now
Hare Krishna. I saw you in Tawaka Temple. I'm from New Jersey, and I heard that you're giving a class, Bhagavad Gita class. So I asked Krishna Priya Mataji to share the link, and she gave me. And today is my first day, and I really really appreciate your lecture. I have a couple of notes and couple of questions too. But I was thinking that it's not appropriate to ask without your permission. So next time, I'll definitely ask some question. And I really appreciate that classes, Prabhu. I am not here for Bhakti Shastri. I have done already, but I'm just refreshing my knowledge.
Thank you, Mataji. And you can ask anytime because you've already done Bhakti Shastri. You're even ahead. So anytime. And today we're now kind of past our time. So it's maybe, a good idea. Next time you can share your realization, Mataji. And thank you so much for joining. We're very grateful to have your association. Thank you.
But one question I have that I missed your introduction part. So is there any way I can get that lecture?
Yes, actually, we have a WhatsApp group. So if you join it, then we share all the recordings on the WhatsApp group. I'll put the link for the WhatsApp group in the chat room, or someone else can if they have it handy. Please someone can, if they can just post it on the group, then you can click on that and then join the WhatsApp group, and then all the recordings will be there.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just
Hare
wanted
Krishna.
to, if it's okay, share just
Yes.
my realization about the previous comment
Yes.
from Kokila Mataji. And what I have grown to understand from Prabhupada saying that in this purport is that materially speaking, women may appear as lesser intelligent due to our giving nature. Women typically are much more giving, they're much more compassionate with our body, our mind, and our heart. So in our bodies, we share space with a young fetus. We give milk to children. And then when they grow up, they come to us when they're crying and we solve their problems. So women naturally, whether we think about it or not, we look for people and situations to help. It's just our nature. And there's nothing wrong in that. There's nothing at all wrong in that innate nature that we have, but sometimes that nature can be taken advantage of. So that may appear as lesser intelligent, but I don't think it's lesser intelligent. It's just a positive quality that Krishna has given us that's being extorted in the material world in material ways. So I don't think it's necessarily a direct statement that women are by nature less intelligent. It's to do with who we are and the world that we live in, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
I don't
This
help
is such
much,
a nice
but
way, Randy, that you mentioned to understand Prabhupada's statement.
thank
And
you.
just to give credibility to what you're saying in terms of Prabhupada's own quotation, Prabhupada actually mentions this when Draupadi, in the section in the Bhagavatam of Draupadi, the Pandavas, and Ashwatthama, where when Ashwatthama has killed her 5 sons, and he comes and he's sort of asking forgiveness, and he's a son of a Brahmana, Draupadi says that forgive him. And that's because she's so compassionate and forgiving. And in that context, Prabhupada mentions that, well, this is her less intelligence. I mean, he's been a criminal. He should be punished. But due to her soft-heartedness, she's almost acting as though she's not so intelligent. But it's the first time, actually, that I heard this interpretation. Like, although Prabhupada says that there, I've read it, actually heard this interpretation given so nicely and clearly. And actually, it's a very wise point that you made. It's actually a very good way to understand the statement.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add too, it also ties into our conversation today about Arjuna's compassion. Krishna said there was nothing wrong with that. You said that that's the very quality that gives him qualification. But at the same time, that compassion that he had was being, it was misguided. It was wrong judgment in that situation, but there was nothing wrong with where his heart was coming from. So I figured it was worth mentioning. Thank you.
Yes, wow, you tie that. That is amazing. Also, like Arjuna, he's very compassionate. It's the right way a devotee should be, but also he's being less intelligent. He's not. He's misguided, and Arjun is his compassion is praiseworthy, but Krishna doesn't praise it. Krishna says it's miserly weakness. So very good connection. Very good connection. How soft-heartedness can be a very good quality, but it can also people can be taken advantage of that, and in that way, it's a negative quality. Very nice. Okay, so we will stop here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your very kind attention. This week, I will put out the homework on the WhatsApp group, so it should be coming today or tomorrow. And please use the study guide. So like in chapter 1, I gave you some structure of the chapter, but I didn't give you like the whole structure. That structure you'll get in the study guide. So make sure to go through that. And most importantly, make sure to read the chapter. It's not enough to answer the questions and go through the study guide. You really miss out on the heart of the course. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Dhanava Pranam.
And